communications. So in your packets, in the reference handbooks that you received, there is an article called Effective Parent-Teacher Communication, and it gives tips on what will help create a positive atmosphere for your child when they're in school. Number one is be a partner with the teacher. Number two is get comfortable within the school and with the teacher. So that just basically kind of means if you have the time, go visit, go speak with the staff, introduce yourself, tell them who your child is. Number three, feel free to make the first contact with the teacher. The teacher is not the only one who has to make the first contact. It's really helpful when a parent contacts the teacher and says, you know, I'm concerned, because teachers a lot of times have 20 plus students that they have to pay attention to, especially if they're in middle school or high school. Elementary, not so much, but yet they still have a lot of stuff going on. And communicate with the teacher early. So at the beginning of the year is always good to, you know, make contact, tell them who you are. Communicate often, not just once. And then follow through what you said you were going to do. If you say, you know, I'll make sure that my child does homework every night, or I'll check their backpack, it's always good to do what you say so that, you know, both sides, the parent and the teacher, know exactly what's going on. And it could always, any kind of communication with the school, and it doesn't really necessarily have to be a teacher, but just the school in general, there's a challenge, you know. Teachers, staff members, they are going to be busy, parents are going to be busy, people have a lot of stuff going on in their lives, but it's always important to, you know, even if you can at a minimal state have communication, it's always good, and it always gives the teacher, you know, this heads up. Whenever they see the child, they know that you're there and willing to help. And a lot of times, both the teacher and the parent will put the trust in the child to inform both what's going on. The child themselves, it's not really good to leave it up to the child. Some children can handle it, but most children don't want to tell their parents they have to read 25 pages. And then a lot of times communication styles don't match. That's actually more than often the problem is, you know, a parent will have a different kind of communication, whether they text or, you know, they email, but the teacher would rather have a face-to-face communication. It's always good to get that clear and understand what both sides would rather prefer. Home and school communications and why it's important. And it says, studies find that students with involved parents are more likely to, and this is the key words here, are more likely to. Because we can't always say, you know, if parents are involved, the student is always going to be successful. I know a few students who have involved parents, but the child themselves, they just don't want to do the schoolwork, so they're not that successful. So it's always nice to pay attention to the words, and this is more likely to, so if they have parent involvement, they're more likely to succeed. And they earn higher grades and test scores, they pass their classes, they attend school regularly, and they have better social skills, and they graduate and go on to further education. There's differing ideas among parents and teachers on what constitutes involvement. Less than welcoming atmosphere in schools and classrooms. My take on it is, or what I've heard from teachers who have been teaching for years, they kind of put up a wall, because when you get so many kids, parents, you know, coming to the door, if every kid's parents came to the door to either, you know, question or complain, or it's kind of overwhelming and they can't pay attention to actually teaching them. And then, so negative or neutral communication often happens between parents and the school. Insufficient training for teachers. We've talked about this in the last couple sessions, you know, especially with Native kids and, well, kids in general, you know, from different cultures, approaching them and the parents is different than approaching a family that's from the Filipino culture or Russian culture. It's just always different. Our Native kids are the majority in the school systems here. They should have a cultural component that they go through, each new teacher, so they understand and, you know, get the idea that they are the majority here. Lack of parent education or skills, time and job pressures, especially now in our economy. You know, a lot of parents have I know so many parents who have 2 or 3 jobs that they're juggling because they're a single parent, and they don't have time to go to the school all the time if their child's getting in trouble or having problems. And then language barriers, there we see a lot of that. So solutions to home and school communication challenges. There's also, I forgot to mention, another article in the little packet called Selected Parent Involvement Research. So if you want to look that up, I think it's about 14 pages maybe, and it talks about a lot of studies why parent involvement is more likely to get kids to graduate. So in the solutions, we're going to talk about interpersonal, technology, and written. So interpersonal solutions, face-to-face and heart-to-heart communication. Overcoming the challenges. There's obviously cultural differences, especially if you got a teacher coming from, let's say, the East Coast or the South. They're obviously going to have way different cultural knowledge of the way children are than what they actually are here. Be aware that differences in eye contact are existent. In non-native cultures, there's a lot of eye contact, and that's to be expected. I experienced that when I went over to college in Middlebury. I was like, wow, people just stare at me, when they're talking or when I'm talking, and I didn't realize that that's what you do. Because normally, it's eye contact was like right there in my face, and it was kind of, to me, it was really embarrassing, but it makes sense, if like a teacher is looking straight at you, talking, a lot of times you shy away. And try not to let you make it nervous because it made me nervous. Crossing the arms can mean being closed off in some cultures. There's also personal differences. Everybody has a personal difference. And then past frustrations with school. A lot of times parents will portray that when they're talking to the administration or the teachers. If they didn't have a good experience with school, it'll come out. Or if a teacher had a bad experience with somebody from a certain culture. I know that my brother, when he was a senior in high school, he almost wasn't able to graduate because he didn't turn in a paper and his English teacher was going to fail him. It was coming up to graduation, and finally he walked right up there, went up to the teacher and told her, "You gotta look, I'm going to stand here while you look in your desk for it." And my mom was there and she looked through it, and then she finally was like, "Oh, it's right here." It was in a file in her desk. Well, it turns out she ended up telling the principal that she had been abused by a tall, dark guy, and he was one of the tall, dark guys in the class. So she was kind of lashing out at him just because of who he was or how he looked. One person is going to play the teacher and the other person is going to play the parent. So read the description, and then you have to role play the scenario. So meetings, an informal meeting. Remember to keep a positive approach, be relaxed, ask friendly questions, but expect general answers, and talk to teachers about beliefs, about students, learning, classroom management, play, or school. And all of this stuff, if you ask teachers like personal questions like that, what do you believe is a good student? What kind of classroom do you run? It'll open up conversations and show that you're actually interested. So an informal meeting would be, if you happen to just stop by and say, "Hey, I just want to see how my kid's doing," or if you see them in the grocery store. A formal meeting would be actually to set it up. Well, that's normally when something like that happens is when it's serious. Set up a meeting at least 3 days in advance, then follow up with an email before, like the day before. Have an agenda so that you are very clear about the topics you like to discuss. If you don't go in there with things that you want to talk about, the teacher is unaware of what you're concerned about. Always take another person with you to take notes or hold to hold both parties accountable. And it is always good to have another person there, because you want to, if you don't, it always comes down to he said, she said type thing. Bring material if you have it, if you're concerned about a grade and you want to bring their report card or, a piece of work that they've done to show that they know what if you think they should have got a better grade on it, things like that. Listen and respond carefully and don't get frustrated. Try to always stay positive. Some situations you might get frustrated, but it's always a good thing to try to stay positive as much as you can. Casual connections. If you see your child at the store, it's always good to say hi, smile, ask them how they're doing. And if they have a minute, share something positive with them. It'll give points. Not that you want to brown nose or butter them up, but it's always, if your child comes home and says, oh, my teacher taught me this, and you see them at the post office, it's oh yeah, thanks for teaching my child this. And it's always, the teachers will remember that. They're human. They like to get compliments. And in return, they'll probably say, oh, your child, So it's always good. Technology solutions. So, has anybody texted with their child's teacher before? It's getting more popular nowadays. I've had a few parents text me. Communication in the digital age. So, Power School. Who knows about Power School? Yeah. Oh, my mom, she was taking care of my brother's daughter, and she's 14. And she called me up and she goes, Darcel, I so wish they had this when you were in school. And I was like, why? To monitor? I got all offensive, but no, it's a great tool. And there's a few parents out there that I know that don't know about it. But those of you that do, I encourage you to use it always. It's a great way to check up on your child's progress. I've actually had a student one time tell the teacher something and go home and tell the parents something. The parent didn't have access to Power School, came to the school really mad because the child was telling the parent something that wasn't even happening. That the teacher didn't give them papers, and I actually worked with this student and I knew that they had papers because I was working on the assignment with them, but then they'd go to the teacher and tell them, I don't have it to turn in, my parents won't let me do homework, I have to do all this other stuff. And the parent came to the school, we had a meeting, and the parent didn't even know that Power School was available. So once they found out and we showed them how to log on, we got them the password, showed them how to navigate it, the student totally changed because the parent was able to see the assignments, was able to, have the access to the teacher's email, to email back and forth. So it's a really great way to keep up on the child if there are problems like that. So emails. So avoid using all capitals or exclamation points. Does anybody know why you shouldn't use all capitals?
Sure.
Yeah, looks like you're yelling at them. Keep the tone positive. If you have something negative to say, it's always better to set up a meeting and say it in person rather than email because it's hard to portray emotions in email as well as texts. Keep emails short, 1 or 2 paragraphs. So if you have a bigger concern, if it's a big but not like an emergency or life-threatening, you don't want to send them this really long email to read because they have papers to grade, they have classes to teach. But if email works for you, email often with positive messages, questions, or concerns, and the teacher will understand that you are communicating and not complaining. And texting, there's a lot of pros and cons with texting. Like I said, you can't really portray emotions in the text, and a lot of times teachers don't want to give out their phone numbers. I know that in the last school that I worked with, a teacher had given out her phone number, and the parents were calling her or texting her nonstop, 3 o'clock in the morning, at lunchtime, and they have concerns, but teachers also have lives themselves, So everybody knows how to get to the school website. Contains a lot of good information, contact information. If you have a question, check the website first. If the information is not there, email the webmaster, which I don't know, a lot of people that actually do that. So written solutions, two-way communication. I write it, you read it, or you write it, I read it. So read whatever the school sends home. The only problem that I have with this is my boyfriend has a daughter. She is going to be in 3rd grade, and the stuff that we get in the mail and what she brings home is like a book. A lot of times that's one of my pet peeves is with teachers, is that they want to just write all this information and then expect a parent who is who works till 10 o'clock at night from 7 a.m. to 10 o'clock or has 2 jobs to sit there and read the whole thing and obtain all the information. I wish they would cut down on all that stuff. So if you send a letter of praise or complaint, make sure you CC the principal. Be brief and specific. It's always a plus to send thank you notes or holiday greeting to your child's teacher if you feel the need to do so. I'm not saying you have to. Send notes with your child about his weekend or night before, particularly if it's been rough. This gives the teacher a heads up about the child's day. I remember with my little sister, my mom used to do that, if she was feeling lonely because she was the baby and she sometimes didn't want to go to school, she'd send a note, she's missing us.